Good afternoon. Welcome to our parent webinar. If all of my presenters could unmute themselves, share your video and share your mic. We're going to go ahead and go around and make some introductions. Okay, so my name is Lisa Kelly and I coordinate mental health services for Gahanna. I have the privilege of working with our amazing mental health team, which consists of our school counselors and our mental health specialists. So we will just go around and make some introductions. We apologize for starting late. We did have a little bit of technical difficulties, but we are ready to go now. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Kalina. Could you go ahead and introduce yourself and just say what you do for Gahanna?
Good afternoon. My name is Kalina Falk. I am the school counselor for students with the last names A through CAR, and I work with the seniors at the Career Center this year. Next year will be juniors. We keep rotating. But I am here as part of our counseling staff. We have 6 school counselors, and so there are 3 of us that are on this call, and then also Bonnie, like Lisa said. So welcome, and we're glad you're here.
Mrs. Prenovo.
Hi, I'm Annie Prenovo. I'm another school counselor at the high school. My alphabet ranges from OS through SN, and I'm really excited to be able to participate in this today, and hopefully you guys enjoy what we have for you. Thanks for coming.
Mr. Miller.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dwayne Miller. I too am a school counselor. My alphabet is KF to OR. I'm excited to be here with everyone, and thank you for coming with seeing us today.
We also have Mr. Barrett. His video just went out. Mr. Barrett is our superintendent. He's here to support us. Hi, Mr. Barrett. Is there anything you'd like to say?
No, I just really appreciate all of you doing this. I think it's a great idea. So thank you very much.
Thanks for being here. And then we have Mrs. Gorley. Bonnie, if you could start your video in the bottom right-hand corner, it says start video. If you could, there you go. Okay, if you could introduce yourself.
My name is Bonnie Gorley, and I am one of the mental health specialists here at Gahanna Lincoln High School, and I'm excited to be here today with everyone else.
Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to let the counseling team take over the screen with their presentation. At the end of the presentation, we'll take live questions from our YouTube chat that I'll be monitoring, and we can ask our panelists those questions along with the questions that parents submitted as part of their registration process. We'll try to get to those as well. So go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay. All right. So again, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I know all of us on the team have worked really hard and are excited to be able to share some of these resources, tools, and thoughts with you. So one of the things that, you know, when we really thought about what was our purpose for today, were a few things. One, as parents ourselves, we understand how stressful right now is for yourself and for your students. So today we really want to hit in and let you guys know that it's okay sometimes to not be okay, and that we really aren't alone in this. So many of us are dealing with some of the same things and are having the same thoughts. We also want to let you know some of the things that you might be seeing with your students at home and maybe even experiencing yourself, and let you know when is it actually time for you to go and reach out and get some help. When is too much, too much. We want to give you an idea of how we can change our mindset when we're dealing with stress and some of the behaviors we're seeing, again, within ourselves or with our students. And then what is this new normal going to look like as we move forward with social distancing and things starting to reopen. So again, I mentioned you are not alone. One of the things I think about as a parent myself is, you know, some of the funny things that I've been seeing other parents share. You know, I've been feeling really guilty for my own children with their screen time. But then I saw this and I thought, well, they're reading. And again, I can't tell you how many times I've shut my door so that I can work and it's quiet, or just to get some peace within myself. And I'm sure many of you can relate to that as well. I also talk about my honeymoon period when we first started social or staying at home and social distancing. You know, we had maybe one meltdown a day. Now I feel like, or one meltdown a week. And now I feel like I'm having, the children and myself are having meltdowns every day. Since we're talking about teenagers, I'm sure you guys can relate to the fact that they're locking themselves in their rooms and not talking to us as well and kind of hiding on their phones. I also have picked up on the chores for my kiddos, which they love. And I'm sure some of your kiddos are enjoying taking on a lot more responsibility in the home. And then I'm pretty sure many of us have reached the point that we're just ready for somebody else to step on in and do it for us. But in all seriousness, I think some of us step back and we feel like 1 minute I feel one way, the next minute I feel another way. And we almost start to feel, you know, uncomfortable with this back and forth. And so we're here to say it is okay that 1 minute we can feel grateful and happy, and another minute we can just feel disappointed, and that's okay. That it's okay for me to love and enjoy spending extra time with my children, but sometimes it's okay that I want to shut the door and lock them out. We can be hopeful and feeling like everything's falling apart at the same time. And it's okay that we can support others, but that we can also put ourselves first. None of us, and we've talked about this a lot with some of our own students as counselors and even parents as well. You know, a lot of us don't know how to homeschool. We didn't sign up to homeschool our own children. And if you're a parent that already does work from home, you've never had to work from home in an environment where the children were still with you or your students were with you. And again, if you've never worked from home, now you're learning how to work from home and to help your students at the same time. It's okay if our kids are spending more time on, you know, their electronics. It's okay that you don't have a perfect, colorful schedule and that you're just kind of throwing things together in a whim. And it's okay that you're not that person going out and picking up a new hobby or working out every day. It's really okay to feel not okay sometimes. So this isn't normal for any of us. And I hope that you get from this today that it's okay to be kind to yourself and give yourself some grace.
So this is Mrs. Falk again. I'm just going to talk a little bit about now that we know that this is not normal. I mean, we know that this is different than it's ever been before. So what are some valid expectations and what to pay attention to as a part of our new normal? Ms. Printable, could you go to the next slide?
Mm-hmm.
So on the left-hand side of your screen, you see some of the things that are just bullet points to pay attention to. That it is important to recognize that there has been so many changes over the last 2 months, and that little changes make a wave and have ripple effects to us. These big changes will definitely have an impact. And so it's important to recognize that and to realize that you might not notice what those changes are or how that is impacting you, your child, or your family unit right now. But when they do start to, you process a little bit or you recognize those things, then you recognize that and work on that. It is typical for teenagers to feel down or to feel sad and lose interest in things at times like that, you know, as their parents, you know, there's waves of that. There are times that they are very engaged and there are other times where they're not. And that part is normal. That's typical. And you also want to make sure that you're talking with your teenager and not just about like what they've lost or what they're feeling down about. That is all good, but also trying to think about the things that are beneficial or positive that are happening right now for them. So those things are very typical. On the other side of that, if you notice a change in your child's behavior or in their personality, their attitude that has making a significant impact on their schoolwork or on their home life, those are things that maybe are raising some red flags to you. And you also need to make sure that you're determining your child able to handle what they're going through and that it's not overwhelming. They can be, good at hiding that, but it is good to, again, have those conversations and talk. So overall, just knowing that those drastic changes are part of what our life is and that we are allowed to change our expectations for how they behave, what we expect from ourselves, what we expect from them, and just continuing to try to do our best. Next slide, please. And with that, I found this graphic and I thought this was, it resonated with me and it made a lot of sense. It's normal to have a smaller window of tolerance when we are under stressful situations. And this is definitely a stressful situation and it's been prolonged longer than we initially thought. And it looks like it will continue to have some type of impact on us. So we want to be aware that there is shutdown mode, that there is kind of this blow up or tantrum mode, and then that rainbow in between where we're feeling good about those things. It's okay to take some time to shut down, or even if you have a time when you're having your own tantrum or blow up, or if your child is, it's okay to do those things. Obviously, you just want to make sure that you're processing, working through those things, and recognizing that our rainbows are probably a little shorter than they typically are. And that if you start to feel yourself being overwhelmed as well, that you take some of these steps to try to de-escalate and then lengthen that rainbow. Next one. So what to look for as far as emotional changes in your teenager, again, like Mrs. Prenovo said, sometimes this also looks the same in adults, is we know that there are maybe feeling sad, crying for no apparent reason, like just it doesn't come to them why they are, it just kind of feels like that. They may be frustrated or irritable. Again, these are things that may be happening more frequently, that they are getting frustrated over the small things, that they are having trouble thinking and concentrating, and then this ongoing sense that what's going to happen in the future. And I know I've spoken with a few of our students, particularly juniors this past week, that were saying, well, we knew that this might happen for our seniors, but we weren't sure that it would impact us very much. We were feeling bad for our friends, but now we realize like this might have an impact on us too. So they're starting to recognize those things and bring that up. Next, please. So some strategies when you're seeing these emotional reactions or having these emotional reactions, things like taking a timeout. I do this at my home all the time. I have 3 small children as well at home. And so there are definitely times that they take timeouts, times I do, my husband does. So that is a good strategy. Walking it out, going outside if possible. And I am very appreciative that the weather is turning a little bit for us here in Ohio. So hopefully being outside can help a little bit, but just being active and not like you have to make it a competition or anything, but just to get outside, maybe do, a lap around the neighborhood. Like I've mentioned before, talking it out, writing it out is fantastic, especially if people feel like they can write that without judgment or feeling like somebody's going to read it and force them to, maybe they don't want to talk. They're just willing to write or draw, color, any of those things. I'm doing some deep breathing and some mindful activities. So the deep breathing really is when you're feeling yourself get agitated, to take some of those deep breaths. We talk about that at all levels of our buildings. I know my elementary students were talking to me about conscious discipline and what they do as far as their pretzel breath or their faucet breath. And they just take in a deep breath and then exhale in different ways to try and help them refocus. And just being mindful about what our actions and words are. Next one, please. And then these are behavioral changes that we have probably seen over the last few weeks. And again, some of them is very typical teenage behavior, but being tired and losing their energy, their clock or their schedule is out of whack compared to when they are at school. Part of that I think is good for them, because we know through research that being at school at 7:30 is hard for them, just developmentally where they are. So part of that can be good, but we also know that maybe a later bedtime means waking up later, feeling like they've lost part of their day, and just kind of finding that routine or that niche for themselves. They might be eating more, eating less, changing the attitude, being restless, or just kind of feeling like they don't know something just doesn't feel right, feels off. The other one about not showering or brushing their teeth or just generally paying attention to personal hygiene. I think with quarantine, or social distancing, we've not necessarily had an argument like you have to do that. Well, why? What am I doing? I mean, if I've had that argument with my children too. But that is something that, if it becomes an issue where they're refusing to do that, then we may need to step in a little bit more. Next slide. Okay, so this visual I like a lot too, because I get caught up sometimes with what the behaviors are I'm seeing or the actions that they're taking. And I am only seeing maybe a little bit of what's really going on. So we call this the iceberg visual, and we want to try to lower that water line so that we may be able to relate to what they're actually experiencing rather than just paying attention to that behavior. So if you are seeing them kind of isolate themselves or not come out as much, or they're just more agitated and more likely to snap at somebody in the house, maybe what's really going on are some of the things below that are listed. So maybe they really are feeling a certain kind of way, but they don't know how else to express it. So that's something to pay attention to. Next one. And so when is it time to get help is, again, like I said, if these emotional or behavioral changes are starting to have a bigger impact on them, if they are, not feeling great and it's consistent and it's making a bigger impact and it's having you're having trouble even communicating any little bit, then obviously you definitely can talk with your family physician or pediatrician. I know that since school is technically today's the last day of new content, they still have some time to finish some work up, but it may be harder for us to, the counselors will still be, working for a few more weeks, but just to try to get resources, and we can definitely relay you to some of those resources. Sorry, I'm reading through a question real quick. So one parent. Okay. All right. So then this little visual, just 4 things to know about your mental health is sadness and depression are not signs of weakness. Those are things that, again, people feel. Feeling sad is not always bad. That is an emotion. We should have that. We don't want to try to erase that. We want to recognize that people are doing that. It's okay to talk to your child about feelings of depression, about feelings or about death, about suicide. If there's any thoughts of that, obviously you want to reach out to your medical professionals right away. And that mental illness is not always a component of violent behavior. It just, it may be associated with that. Sometimes it may not. So just things to think about as far as when you feel like it may be getting more than just, oh, they're sleeping until noon because they have nothing to do. It's more like excessive sleeping. It would be like they're not getting out of bed or they're refusing to come out of their room. When that kind of stuff is happening, that's when you say, okay, maybe we need to step it up and get some other help or support and assistance. Okay, next slide.
Hi, this is Bonnie Gorley. So the concept of a growth mindset was developed by Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck. According to Dweck, a mindset is a self-perception or self-theory that people hold about themselves. Her research really focused on 2 different mindsets, growth and fixed. So someone with a growth mindset might say, my skills and abilities come from hard work. I view challenges and failures as opportunities to learn. Someone with a fixed mindset might say, I am born with or without certain skills and abilities, and there is nothing I can do about it. Next slide, please. So how do we take this concept of a growth mindset and apply it to what we are going through right now? It's important to look for the lessons. Ask yourself, what wisdom or insight can we gain from this? Look at the word fail, not as you or your son or daughter were not successful, but rather an opportunity for growth. And even as this school year is wrapping up, continue setting goals. Challenge yourself and your family in new ways, even throughout this summer. Because after all, it is the journey that matters. Next slide, please. So the concept of growth mindset is all about the way in which we think. So how do we shift our thoughts? Oftentimes as counselors, we work with others on how to cognitively reframe thoughts. This technique is used to help create a different way of looking at a situation, person, or relationship. The hope is the new perspective gained will also create new behaviors or attitudes. I added a picture of a camera on this slide because I would like for you to think about cognitive reframing as when you zoom in or out using the lens, it changes the experience or the way in which you see each new view. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at some relevant, concrete examples of cognitive reframing. So you might have heard your son or daughter say something like, "My friends and I can't see each other." A way in which that statement could be reframed is, "My friends and I are protecting each other." Or as a parent, you could use the phrase, "It sounds like you and your friends are protecting each other." "I'm stuck at home," or "I'm safe at home." "I have lost all my freedom." "I have relinquished my freedom for a noble purpose." "I miss the things I love." "I'm increasing my gratitude for the things I love." So currently at home, I have a freshman in high school and a senior. And also my daughter came home from college. And her college is taking a typical 14-week semester, and they're teaching all of the material in 8 weeks. So on Wednesday, she said, "Mom, I'm only in week 2. And I said to her, "Honey, it sounds like you're a fourth of the way done." And she said, "That's a good way to look at it." And so I can't take away her feelings of being overwhelmed. But again, that's an opportunity for me as a parent to help adjust her lens. And you may already be reframing with your children. Our bigger purpose today is to encourage you to be intentional with cognitive reframing and to give you a tool that you can use. And it is such a powerful and positive way that you can influence your children on a daily basis. Next slide. And finally, I felt that this picture was a really nice way to summarize a growth mindset and cognitive reframing. So the picture says, "What you choose to focus on will grow." And in this picture, they are watering or nurturing the flower pot of love. And so how I interpret this is that if I choose to invest my energy, my emotions, thoughts, or actions in love, then that the hope is that it will bring me more happiness and meaning. Okay, next slide.
Hi, everyone. This is Dwayne Miller speaking, and I'm just going to talk to you about what is the new normal per se. And the first thing we wanted to talk about as a group and convey to everyone was the new normal is yet to be defined at work, at school, in our day-to-day living. So this is where you'll find a lot of what ifs occurring for parents and for our students. The what if, we're not back in school, we still have fall sports. The what if college does not start. What ifs? We would suggest to our parents, just give it time. This is the time of patience. This is the time of learning, because the new normal is yet to be defined. We don't know these answers. And if anyone told you that they know the answer of what our new normal looks like in 3-4 months from now, I would venture to say that they are just guessing. Another thing we talked about was we don't want to rush back to what was, because what was is how we got to where we are today. We're hoping that as a group, as a community, as a school, and as a people, that we take all the information that we have learned, and we apply it to the future. And applying that information, everything that we have learned to the future, will better set ourselves moving forward so that we can have our fall sports. And, next May, we won't have to come up with all these grand plans for graduation. We'll be able to have a graduation with all of our families, with all of our students under one roof. And that is where we want to get back to. But in the meantime, we have to take the precautions and take our new information and apply it to our daily lives. This has been a common theme today, and we want to reemphasize that. That is why it's here on this slide. It is okay to not be okay. And parents, that applies to you just as it does for our students. This is hard. A lot has happened in this last 3 to 4 months, and that we still have time to see what's going to go happen moving forward. So know that in your heart and in your mind, it's okay to not be okay. And finally, we want to emphasize this as well. Parents, your mental health is just as important as your child's mental health. If you are unable to manage yourself, kids feed off of the people that lead them. That applies for our teachers, and our administration has been very, very adamant telling our teachers to take care of themselves. And we want to convey to you, parents, it is very, very important that you take care of yourselves as well.
So this kind of segues really nicely back into this. At the end of our presentation and in the recording that you can go back and rewatch, we'll have quite a few resources for you guys to look at and some articles to read. But one of the articles that as a group we found, and it just seemed to, say what is on our mind, and sometimes as parents, and I'm coming from the parent perspective now, we just want to know that what we're doing is okay, or that we're doing enough, or that we don't have to be perfect, and there's not some perfect way we're supposed to be doing things. And so this particular article talked about that it's okay to do less, and it outlined that
Annie, for some reason, we have lost your internet connection. Are you there, Annie?
Yes.
Okay. We lost you probably 30 seconds ago or so.
Oh, great. Okay, sorry about that. So I guess this is an article that I'm not sure exactly where I was. So this is an article that we found, that we felt like just really outlined what we were all thinking as not only counselors, but even parents ourselves. The idea that we're supposed to be working, but also entertaining, especially if we also, on top of having a high school student, having a younger student that can't seem to entertain themselves. Something I know many of us are probably guilty of, me included, is the comparing. on Facebook. I'm sure many of you have seen, the parents that have the beautiful schedules showing pictures of their kids, working really hard. They're doing yoga, they're playing outside, and you sit there and you're like, why aren't my kids doing this? I'm supposed to be doing that. And you start to get down on yourself. And it's really important to stop comparing, because we all have our unique situation. And really, in the end, not everybody has it all together. It's okay to relax about schoolwork. I know this is an intense time, and with schoolwork, while we want to keep them up and we want them to be successful, this is a different situation that we're in now. This is not what a regular school day looks like. Some of our students have responsibilities now that they didn't have when they were inside the school building. And so it's important to know that it's okay to take a step back from school. Students should not be expected to work on school for an 8-hour day. That's just going to stress and overwhelm not only the student, but you as a parent too. And then here's a few things that we want you to really focus on. One is getting active, taking a walk, like Mrs. Falk had said, focusing on making connections. We are at home with our kids, our families, even the friends and families we don't get to see, finding ways to check in with them. And whether it is Zoom calls or Google Meets, doing social distancing on the driveway and having a chat, and just really enjoying the time that you have with your kids is a great focus. I often say to parents and students that I've talked to during this time that it's really baby steps. Really focus on what can I accomplish today. I might have a to-do list of 20 things, but if today I can get 2 of those things done, then I've accomplished something, and that's okay. So really choosing what's a couple things that I can accomplish today, a couple priorities. And then at the end of the day, it's not only okay to do less, we do encourage it. Because again, we're looking at a day that is not like it would be if they were in school. And so you having to be flexible and work within your unique situation is okay. And we do know, as Mr. Miller said, that this isn't going to be permanent, but it is going to take some time. And so we just want to focus on the now and how we can, again, take on these few things so that we end up with just greater connections and a better perspective of ourselves. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our moderator, Miss Lisa Kelly, and we'll be able to answer some questions that you have.
Thank you, Annie. If you could stop sharing your screen.
Yeah.
And then if our panelists could all unmute their video, unmute their cameras and their mic. There's everybody. Mr. Miller, we need you to start your video.
You can start video. Oh, there we go.
Gorley, we need you to start your video. There you are. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that presentation and sharing that information. We've had a very active group on our YouTube chat. So that's great, because we definitely have things to talk about. One of the things Mr. Miller addressed during his section was a couple questions that have come up from parents, and that is how to help students with that what if. What if we don't come back in the fall? What if my senior doesn't get to start college the way that he thought he would? What if we don't have fall sports? And so I'd like to give parents maybe some language to use with their kids to address those what if questions. Those are hard because, like Mr. Miller said, we don't know the answer. So what's some language that we can use with them? Mrs. Gorley, I was going to have you take this one. I know that you have a senior that probably has those what if questions. So could you maybe share some of the ways that you're addressing this with your students and just some language that our parents can use?
Absolutely. So like Lisa said, I have a senior that's graduating right now. In order to answer the questions of what if, that is a tough question. Oftentimes I tell my son that there's no way that I can predict what is yet to come. I encourage him to have patience. And I just want to let you know as parents that it's okay to say, I'm sorry that you're going through this, and to be transparent with your own feelings and thoughts of, I don't know the answer to that question. And also to encourage them to focus, I believe Annie Prenovo mentioned this, to really focus on today. What do we have control over today? Because we can't control the future. We don't know how we're going to return, and that's okay. But to really focus on today and what do we have control over today?
Thank you for that. The next question in our feed was about hygiene. So we definitely talked about the fact that some of our teenagers are probably struggling right now to have the best hygiene, and it could definitely be related to how they're feeling emotionally, and they just might not be there. So the parent asked, what's a good way to bring up hygiene with a boy? So thinking about a male teenager, Mrs. Falk, I'll give this one to you. What would be a good way to directly address hygiene with a teenage boy?
Yeah. So in my experience, that's exactly what I do. I directly address it. So if they're not having, they haven't been in the shower, then that's what you need to address. Like, you haven't been in the shower in a couple of days. We need to take one today. That's our that's on our to-do list. We're going to be doing that. If the refusal part is hard, especially when they're teenagers, if they are refusing to do those types of things, but there is, again, you can establish norm expectations for you and your house at this point. A shower daily, or a shower if you want to give them every other day, fine, you can do that. But that's the expectation, and that's how you address it with them. This is the expectation of what you're going to do.
And I will add to that, having a boy that lives in my house right now that doesn't, we literally tested his toothbrush to see if he was brushing, because he told us he was, and like put it in a specific location. And like 2 days later, we're like, dude, you're not brushing your teeth. So we have things that he values. We have those as contingencies for hygiene. So if you want your time on your Xbox, which is his prime social time, that's really how he's connecting with his friends. And we hate to take that away from him, but it's very simple to take a shower or brush your teeth. So we just do once you do this, then you can have your Xbox time. And that has seemed to help with him. Hopefully I won't have terrible dentist bills when the quarantine is over. The next question on our chat, not really a question, but more of a statement. We have a parent who has an ESS student who stated that she's just really worried about the child's lack of progress, because we know that some of our students with special needs require a lot of direct one-on-one therapy. And we totally get that. And so just from my angle, as someone who worked in the special education realm for many, many, many years of my career, I would say I completely understand your concern. And one thing I would recommend is just really openly communicating with the providers for your child to make sure that they're aware of the regression that you're seeing. Is there a way that we can do other things to support your child because of the regression, and just being as thinking outside of the box as much as possible. I think we've got some excellent related service providers and intervention specialists in Gahanna. So I would really encourage you to just be as open with them as possible about your worry about him or her losing those services in the fall, because you're worried about that regression piece. The next question is about lying. So we have parents, amazingly, who have teenagers that are lying and saying that they're doing their work and they're not. And what's interesting is we've actually, as high school staff, have seen teenagers turn in blank work just so that it looks like it's done. That is a common theme that we've also seen. So Mrs. Prenovo, I'm going to give you this one. How can parents address the lying and the deceit about getting their work done?
Sure. So I will tell you, I have a 14-year-old boy. He's going to be a freshman next year. And I feel like during this time, I felt like he was working so hard every day. I'm like, man, he's working so hard. And then all of a sudden I get like a notification on my phone, like, your son has an F in English. And I'm like, well, what have you been doing in English for 3 hours a day? And so I've experienced it. It's a hard balance between feeling like, should I be checking everything every single day to see if they're missing and hounding them? Because in the end, it strains our relationship. So I kind of am going back to something that Kalina Falk had mentioned with the iceberg graphic. You know, I think what's important is that if they're lying about doing their work, you know, trying to get down to the bottom of it. Like, why are we lying about it? Trying to understand the purpose of not doing the work, feeling like they have to tell a story about it. Is it because the work is difficult and they don't understand it? Is it because they're used to having, you know, a teacher in a classroom do the instruction and they don't understand it? Or is there something else going on? So, you know, there's never anything wrong in just sitting down and trying to understand the why behind it.
Thank you for that. Mr. Miller, did you want to add something? Are you putting your finger in there for like by the camera?
No.
I just wasn't sure if you were like raising your hand. Okay. All right. The next question or comment on the YouTube chat, I'm going to give to Mrs. Gorley, and that is, we have a parent, just a question about the growth mindset. She said that she's found that once she's got past her 40s, it's hard for her to maintain a growth mindset, that she feels like her mind is not as plastic as it used to be, and it's harder to learn and maintain new learned items. So Mrs. Gorley, with you being our resident expert on growth mindset, I thought I would let you address that.
Well, thank you very much. So thank you for the question. I too, just going to disclose, am past the age of 40. And you're right, it is not easy to always have the growth mindset in everything that we do. And I think it's important to remember that and to not put all that pressure on yourself to have a growth mindset in everything we do, because I certainly don't. And so just gentle reminders, you know, I sometimes when I'm trying to role model something for my kids at home, I'll put up pictures on the refrigerator or around the house as just reminders. And it is pretty rewarding, I'll say, to see. Sometimes my kids will say, even to me, Mom, is that a growth mindset you're using right now? So I just want to encourage you, as far as, you know, a growth mindset, that it's okay to not have it all day, every day. And that we're lucky we get to start each day and start over with that. So that would be my advice.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our next question is about their children being afraid that they're never going to get to see their friends again. And we know that teenagers are social beings and need to connect. So I'd like us all to kind of just go around and think about different creative ways that, that kids can connect and still be safe here. So Mr. Miller, do you have anything you'd like to share? We'll start with you.
Absolutely. One of the beauties of technology, it has brought us, while it seems to separate us in many ways, technology has allowed for us to come together, especially during this time. There are many apps out there that come to mind for young, both this high school students to work with and move forward with their friends. An app that comes to mind is House Party. It allows up to 8 people to get on their phones and they can play games together. And it's FaceTiming, but it's interactive within games for the kids. It's safe, it's fun, and that's most certainly one app I would suggest parents and students utilize.
Great, thanks. Would anyone else like to jump in on this one?
I was going to say, I actually had a student reach out to me a couple weeks ago about how she is not comfortable with video like FaceTime. And it's not that she doesn't want to do it. She just feels like it's very impersonal and it's hard for her to feel that connection still. So something that she has decided was safe for herself. And after talking with her parents and the other students, she met someone out at a neighborhood, but they stood on kind of like opposite sides of the street, but they still did their walk and it was close enough that they could still communicate and feel like they were talking. So they started doing that. She also 1 week was not able to like set up that same arrangement. So she just talked to her on the phone as she was walking and the other person was on the phone as they were walking. So it still felt like there was something there for her. And we talked about this yesterday, is things are opening up, more people like we are seeing, seen in my neighborhood, more people gathering together. And really, I think that's a personal thing if they feel comfortable or safe doing that. I know that we have seen, like, we talked about the driveway get-togethers where there's been like people on each corner, where they're safe and they're keeping separation at the same time of being able to physically see one another. So I really think that some of that comes down to your personal preference, what you feel safe with, and then also making sure that you're taking those precautions, but that you're also allowing yourself to still be engaged with people, and not totally cutting yourself off.
Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else want to add anything to that one? I will say,
oh, sorry.
go ahead, Amy.
I had a student that I spoke with, and she kind of specifically said, I really miss my best friend. She lives a block away, and I feel like we don't get to see each other. She's not a big talk on the phone person. And, how can we connect? Because she's my best friend. And we talked about making almost like a game of it, in the sense that write her a note, and then deliver it to her, and then do a back and forth thing, or you've heard of those like fairy things that adults have been doing on the different porches. We kind of talked about finding a cute little gift, or something small that you want to share with them, and doing kind of like an exchange with a note. So we've talked about different creative ways with my students that go beyond just the FaceTime or sitting in the driveway.
Okay, yes, thank you for that. I'm just reading through. We've got, like I said, an active group on our Google chat, and I absolutely love it. Okay, so the next question is, we have a couple of parents who say that their kids just are not doing work. So they're not even just like lying about it. They're just refusing to do the work. And I know with some of the high schoolers that I personally work with, that's definitely been a struggle, just getting them to do it, period. So can we talk through and maybe give some parents some advice on what to do if your kid is just shutting down and they're just not willing to do the work at all? Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yeah. One thing we were talking about in the whole party of this presentation is the whole student. Sometimes it's plain and simple. A student's not doing work because they're just being lazy, or this new normal allows them to not do work. But sometimes it's something deeper. Before, I would say to parents, before we make any rash judgments or punish a student for not doing work, having a sit-down conversation, I believe, with a high school student is more than warranted to understand why it is they're not doing the work at all, especially if that student is upfront with the information. Having a conversation and seeing where's their mind, what is that mindset that they're in that says, I'm not going to do chemistry work, when they've done chemistry for 27 weeks and now they just stop. That to a counselor, that's a red flag. There's usually something that's triggered that behavior. So I would really want to have a conversation with my high school student and see what's going on with them.
Anyone else want to add anything to that? I think, go ahead, Bonnie.
So I would completely agree with Mr. Miller. I was kind of thinking twofold. Number one, just really sitting down and talking to your teen, and having that open, honest discussion. And then also finding ways that motivate them. What motivates one student may or may not motivate another. Mrs. Prinovo shared, actually Mrs. Kelly shared, here, you want to get on your game? Here's what I need to see you do. And so finding that compromise as well. And what I keep telling my children is, I really just want you to do your best. I cannot expect A's out of everything right now, and neither can you. So that would be also my advice, is finding what motivates, communicating that, my expectations have lessened because, we are in a different environment, and it's probably hard on them right now. And then also, like Mr. Miller said, sitting down and really talking and having that open, honest conversation.
And a part of that honors conversation is also telling them that this is not easy to be motivated about, because if they're not seeing any benefit of that, it is hard for them to rally and just do it because they're supposed to. So there does sometimes have to be a little bit of that outside, have you had to communicate, like, have they talked to their teacher? Some teachers were holding, group lessons, others were doing their office hour type thing, so they could have that conversation with the student. But just getting them to do that is challenging. So at those times when we say, like Mrs. Prunova was talking about, sometimes she's had to step back because her son is not, doesn't want her hovering and is not receptive to that. But it's also, there may be some times where you need to push them a little bit and say, okay, we're doing this. The three of us are getting on and we're going to have this conversation. I I say that out of one side and then the other side. I know that today is the last day, like we talked about, of new instruction. And so they only have, a few more days of them doing work to catch up or to make up some things. So at this point, salvaging anything for, what we're going to do for this year, my focus would be on those things that are most important as far as just what the teacher is looking for. I know you've assigned these things. What out of that is the biggest takeaway that they need? So breaking it down and chunking those assignments to get them started. Sometimes it's just because it's so overwhelming that they've missed so much. So maybe if we narrow down what they actually have to do, that can help with them feeling like they have a to-do list they can accomplish.
And I think too, stressing to them that the grading is much different this 9 weeks. We're doing the satisfactory, unsatisfactory. So they don't have to be striving for an A+. We need to get the work in. And that's one thing that I've really stressed with the students that I work with who are struggling is, look, just do your best. This doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to do what's required so that we can get that S and, move on. Annie, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of parents that I've talked to, it sounds really like in the perfect world that we can sit down and we'll talk to our kids and they'll open up and they'll just share all their life problems with us and we'll find the problem, we'll fix it, and everything will be great. But a lot of parents have said to me, like, they won't talk to me. Like, I can't figure it out. And I would say that when you feel like you're hitting that wall, that you want to have those conversations with your student and they're just not reciprocating, I find that any positive adult relationship that they have, if you don't want to talk to me, who would be somebody you would want to talk to? Is it a teacher? Is it another relative, an uncle, an aunt, an older sibling, your counselor at school? We regularly are talking with students on a regular basis because it's easier for them to open up to us sometimes than it is.
Annie, you're cutting out again. Sorry, we lost Annie there for a second. She's frozen. Okay, we are going to go on to our next question. And if Annie rejoins us, we can go back to her.
I'm back.
Okay.
I don't know why just my office is off. I apologize.
Okay. The next question is a procedural question. A parent said that they've not received an email about the year-end procedures. And that email, Ms. Falk, you want to go ahead and talk about that?
Yeah, I believe it was sent out last week, but there was something, a follow-up. I sent one to one of my students that asked the same question earlier today. If that person wants to email me, I can forward it to them. What I do know is that the pickup will be next Friday, the 22nd, and they are broken down by time based on grade. And there's a whole process of how they will come through and pick up each thing or drop off each thing that they need to. Pretty much all around the parking lot in the building, there's different tables and different stations so that they can drop off what they need, pick up anything that they have, and then flow of traffic can be okay, because we know here that it can be pretty hectic. So there is a lot of details in there, but I'm happy to email that if you want to reach out.
And I just put Kalina's email in the Google chat if you do need to email her that. The next question is, let's see. There was a question about whether or not the teachers and administrators gave thought to, when planning the distance learning, that parents would have to be working from home, and that they're not teachers as well. Like, what types of thought came into that? So did teachers, administrators think about parents who have to work from home and are not teachers? And I can say, I don't know, the counselors were not necessarily a part of the planning, but I can say from the administrative lens that the curriculum team spent hours and hours and hours trying to give teachers guidance, and their primary focus, and I'm being totally honest, was showing grace for families and for kids. It wasn't how much can we get them to do, at all. It was, how can we make this as doable as we possibly can for students and for families? Which is why the satisfactory, unsatisfactory grading came in, because the district is trying so hard to show grace. And also why we've suggested to teachers to limit the amount of work that they're giving for each subject area to much, much less than it would be if they were sitting inside the classroom, so that it is manageable. So if you're finding it not manageable, I do apologize for that. That certainly was never the intent of any of the planning that went around it. And I would suggest that if we're in the situation again in the fall, and again, we don't know what will be happening in the fall, but if you find that your student is overwhelmed in the fall and it's overwhelming for you too, please reach out to your student's counselor so that that counselor can work with you and the teachers to make it more manageable. We really are trying our best to show families grace and to support families. Like, we understand. And all of us here on this panel today are all also working from home and have kids that are in school for the most part too. So we totally get it and we relate to that. So please reach out to your student school counselor if that continues to be an issue. Let's see, so we do have a parent who is talking about how to help seniors deal with the fact that retail stores can be open, but they can only bring 2 family members to attend the graduation that was communicated today. So it seems to be like it's conflicting information, that on one end you can go into any store, but for graduation they have to limit to 2. I'm not familiar with the graduation planning, so I don't know if any of you are that would want to take that question.
The only
Yeah,
thing,
I think we all have a little bit of knowledge about the graduation plan in total, but just our principal, Mrs. Williams, had to present something to the Franklin County Health Department, and they were the people who approved our graduation plan. And they were the ones who told us how many people could come with the student. And all of these things were directed by the state of Ohio. And I know that that's the very point that you're trying to make in terms of it being conflicting. So I can take my entire family to TJ Maxx, but I can't bring them to my graduation. And we understand that frustration, but we are being guided by the state of Ohio by how many people can be in one location at one time.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Mhm.
The next question, is there a reason why the teachers weren't doing instruction rather than sending assignments and hoping that kids could get them done? We really struggled with lack of instruction in a few subjects. So again, I'll take that from an administrative lens and say that's excellent feedback. If we are in a position to do virtual learning again in the fall, and again, we don't know yet, but if that is something that we'll have to do, even if we have a blended curriculum or anything along those lines, that's definitely feedback that we'll be giving to our administration. Mr. Barrett our superintendent, is still watching this. He just wasn't going to be part of the panel discussion, but he's certainly still on this call and is hearing that concern. So as we plan moving forward, that's definitely something that we can encourage teachers to do, especially given the parent feedback. So thank you for that. Okay. The next question, my student has been angry, sad, and lashed out at me because everything has been canceled. Prom, graduation, the traditional graduation concerts, and he did not have a chance to say goodbye. So I think that that's a big issue, is that lack of closure. You know, when our kids left school, they didn't know that they weren't coming back. They didn't have the big goodbyes that we usually have. So can we give parents some ideas on how to support students with that lack of closure? Who would like to start on this one? Annie?
Sure. I think something that we've discussed just within our counseling team and even with some of our students and families is that this is really, we've talked about grief a lot, how, you know, grief isn't really about a death of somebody in your life, that it's really about a loss, and that this is a loss for our students. They're having to process this and go through kind of that cycle of grief that even somebody would go through if they had lost somebody that was important to them. And so we try to talk to them through that and normalize that it's okay to feel angry. It's okay to be upset, that you're feeling these ways. It's normal because we're grieving this. So then, you know, I think normalizing it for them is important, understanding that this is grief for them. And there's also no magic wand, unfortunately, to make it better for them. And I think for us as counselors too, that's been the most difficult. If many of my students, I was like, if I could give you your prom, if I could give you your graduation, I would do it in a heartbeat. So let's figure out a way that we can still celebrate you and share with you how special you are to us, but help you walk through those emotions of loss.
Thank you for that. A follow-up question to that is, one of our participants said that her daughter wanted to know if she would get a chance to see her teachers from this year so she can say goodbye and have some closure with them, because that means a lot to her. So Kalina, why don't you address that?
Yeah, I would love to be able to provide something like that. I think that seems like if we are able to be here, that would be something we could hopefully arrange. I can definitely work on an opportunity like that, because I do think that would be helpful for a lot of people. But yeah, that's a great suggestion.
Okay, I think that's something that we can put. We have I know like some of the people that I supervise have a "what will we do when we get back" document. And so like to try to provide some of those things, I think that's a great idea. We can definitely add that. The next question is, how are things going to be graded? And if they will get a GPA this quarter or this year. Parents are saying that their kids worked really hard and they want them to receive credit for that. So I believe that information will come out. I'm not sure when, but I believe that information on exactly how GPAs will be calculated for this 9 weeks, I believe that will be coming out soon, definitely before the closure of the school year. Does anyone have any other information on that? No. Okay. So know that information is definitely coming out. That's something that will be communicated directly, I believe, from Mrs. Williams, the principal. Okay. Talk about that. We got another comment about asking teachers to do more Zoom or virtual calls instead of just giving assignments. And that's definitely something that we'll make sure our curriculum team is aware of, should we continue to be in this situation. Just more people are saying like more Google Meets and more video conversation. Also, it looks like it'd be helpful. Another suggestion that we can give to our curriculum team as we're planning is it looks like some advance notice to when Google Meets are happening so that parents can do that. Mr. Barrett chimed in and said that Mr. Miller is right that the district had to work with Franklin County Health Department for approval, and they approved the graduate with only 2 guests. So that does come back for the ceremonial walk. Okay, I think that we've answered. There was one, and it looks like there's a question about extended school year services for a parent of a special needs child. And it specifically looks like the parent is struggling to understand the decision from the IEP team to not approve extended school year services. And if you're comfortable, the parent that typed that, I would like to share your concern with the special ed coordinator for the high school. That way she can address that directly with you and maybe come up with a solution for that. Okay. I think that we've answered them all. We really appreciate the parents taking time to spend with us today. We've really enjoyed collaborating with you. This has been the most chatty YouTube group that we've had, which is awesome. I absolutely love it. It's been a great discussion today with all of you. And I want to thank our panelists for also putting together the presentation and being here for our parents as well. If you do have additional questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to your child's school counselor or Mrs. Gorley. We'd be happy to continue to support you in any way that we can. The recording to this presentation will be posted along with the handout, and any links that the presenters have will be posted directly on the landing page that was emailed to you today and then when you originally registered. So if you do have questions, please reach out, and thank you so much. Have a great day.